So let's just look at, because Asif had made that point of like, where were you in 2020? What were you doing, sort of, right? When civilization was collapsing. And also looking at the point of objections to a world that's best for all, because all of that fits together. And so you have people who will try to argue that saying that the world can be perfect, that it can be improved, that things can be best for everybody, they will try to define that as a cult, right? But they're not being honest about what the word cult actually means, and what the reality of that context and that word actually is in this world. Because I would argue that it's like we have this saying, if you're not a part of one group, if you're not part of this group, you're a part of another group. So you're always a part of a group, whether you know it or not. You're going to be in a cult, whether you know it or not. So what is the cult that you're in is really the question. And is that cult or that culture that you're participating in set up in a way where it's best for everybody? And what we're talking about is, if everybody had an equal vocabulary, which means you know every word and you know the definitions of all the words, then it's like we're all on the same page. So the culture that would come from that would be one of cooperation, harmony, understanding, communication, expression, and so forth. But when you start limiting what one person knows compared to another, or you have different things, then you have different cultures, and the cultures start to clash. And what's very interesting is anybody who would promote, hey, let's everybody get on the same page, because that would be the prerequisite for having a world that's best, that would be labeled as a cult. So the question is, why would you fear that word, right? So I want to give that example we were just talking about before the podcast, which was going over to a friend's house who has techno tutors. So they're kind of in that process of learning about all these points, right? And they have a kid who's relatively similar age to Max, a little bit older. And the kid was talking a lot about Pokemon, and we had been over there once before, and they were like watching Pokemon on the TV. And when we went over the next time, I had asked that we don't have any TV on, because I didn't want Max impulse buy any of that stuff. And even the previous time we asked, hey, can we turn it off? And the parents were totally cool with that. They understood, but it was the kid who kept wanting to turn it back on. But with Max, we just went into another room. And I didn't tell him like, hey, we need to get out of here or anything like that, or create any fear about it. I was just like, hey, why don't we go into the other room? Because, the kid, who I won't say the name or anything, but, he wants to watch this TV show, but it's not best for you, Max. So let's go in the other room. And Max was fine with that, because he didn't even care about the TV show. He wanted to go play something else. And when we were over there another time, the kid wanted to play like the theme songs for Pokemon and so forth on like the Alexa and all that stuff, right? And then I was commenting to you guys earlier about how it's kind of like the kid has become a salesperson for Pokemon, because he was showing me his Pokemon cards. But with Max, he didn't have any interest in it. He didn't care about the TV show. He didn't care about the stuff on the Alexa that he was playing. He didn't care about the Pokemon cards. He didn't care about any of it. He just wanted to build electronic circuits, because that's what's his vocabulary, right? And no matter what the other kid was doing, Max wasn't really being sold on it, because it's like, let me ask you a question. Why is Pokemon in itself interesting? Objectively. Like, I don't have any interest in watching it. Do you guys?
I used to when I was a kid.
But I mean, right now.
As a kid.
Right now.
Now, no.
Right, because why?
I mean,
It doesn't have anything to do with reality.
Yeah.
Okay, so in other words, you're placing value on something that is not about. You see what I mean?
Right.
So like with my son Max, who's 3.5 now, he's building electronic circuits. He wants to see what they can do. Or he wants to play with like the train set, because he's watching the train go around the track, and he's trying to figure out, why does it crash or whatever, like on the little train set that this kid had. But the Pokemon thing had nothing to do with anything he was interested in doing. And so this is something I've been saying for a while now, is when you build a child's vocabulary effectively with TechnoTutor, they will be less open to manipulation. Right? Because this kid was kind of like, it's like when someone sees a movie and you're like, hey, you got to watch this movie. It's really great. Da, da, da. Max didn't care about any of that. Right. And so the point of where we kind of jumped into all this was me making the point of Pokemon itself is a cult. Because it's like you buy into it, you get all charged up with some kind of emotion, it fits into some value system you have, and then you want to spread that to others. So this kid was not in a conscious way, but that's what he wanted to talk about. That's what he wanted to show us. That's what he wanted to do, was listen to the music and all that stuff. instead of just be here with us where we were doing what we were doing all together. He kept kind of trying to bring it back to those points. And it wasn't really like a big thing, but it just, you notice it, right? And it was really cool because the parent was starting to notice like, wow, this is the level to which my child has been programmed with this stuff. And parent not realizing prior to that it was an issue. And this is also part of the problem, is that we have in our world so many things going on that are results of things that have happened in the past, like prior programming, that if people can't even see that stuff could be changed, or like in the future changed or prevented, that how can the things that are going on in the world possibly be prevented or not occur? So it's like we kind of have to just take everything for granted and then go from there. But that's like trying to, like they say, put lipstick on a pig. You know what I mean? It's like, you're not really, I'd rather have lipstick on my spouse for example, or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, why are you trying to do that? Why not? Let's find the real solution. But then people would say that's a cult, right? So I wanted to give that context before we really jump into everything. But what do you guys see? I think, Drake, you seems like you want to add.
Yeah. So that point about him becoming a salesman for Pokemon, it just kind of really opened up that point of how children are naturally salesmen if you let them, because you want a child to be happy. And so it's really easy. You were making the point before of if you like Pokemon, raise your hand. He's looking at you like, raise your hand, like, come on. And most people would go, okay, yeah, just
to
because
play along with the kid.
Exactly.
And he was asking me, he was like, why aren't you raising your hand? And I said, well, do you want me to lie to you or be honest? I'm not raising my hand because I don't like it.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
Instead of just going along with it and like, well, I don't want to hurt the kid's feelings or something. It's like, you're not hurting their feelings.
Right.
You're actually hurting them by going along with something that you see isn't best. And okay, before we go further, I just want to ask you guys. I know when I say like Pokemon is a cult, I would never impulse my kids with that stuff. To me, it's so obvious the degree to which that is actually harmful for a child. But you guys grew up probably having interest in Pokemon. Like Pokemon was a little bit I was like too old for that when it hit, there was other things I was impulsed with as a kid, but it's not even that. It's not just Pokemon specifically. It's like anything, Disney, Transformers. In fact, when we were driving over to their house, nothing to do with them and specifically, Max was looking at the electrical poles as we were driving down the street. And he was like, hey, Cam, how come there aren't any transformers on the poles? And he means transformer in the sense of an electrical transformer, right? Because, you have these transformers which step down the voltage so they can go into your house and so forth. And there's other things they do. And I remembered that earlier this week, we were at the playground and some kids had brought some transformer toys. And he didn't really seem to have any interest in them because he likes to play with toy cars, but the kids brought them. They didn't really want to share them. He wasn't even asking to. Some of the other kids were, but then the kids ended up just putting them down and going. And I just started doing a game with everybody, right? So like I got the kids all to like play a game together and stuff. But later, when Max asked me that question, I said, hey, Max, do you remember those kids we were playing with at the playground and they had those toys? They were like cars and you could change them into like a robot thing. He was like, yeah. And I said, those are also called transformers. Like you might hear the kids calling them transformers, but do you know why? I always ask him, like, do you know why? And he's like, no. And I said, because the word transform means to change from one form to another. That's one of the meanings of the word transform. That's why I like a transformer within electrical circuits. It changes the electricity in one form to another, depending on the context. And I said, so those cars, they like change into a robot. So they're called transformers. And I said, I just want you to know that. So later when you hear them talking about it, you understand why they're talking about it. But within me, just so you guys understand, I was explaining to him because I don't want him to feel confused. Like, are these kids stupid that they're calling these things transformers? Or am I stupid? Or like, why are you, because when they're saying transformers, what do you think he's thinking?
He's thinking the electrical component that steps down.
Right.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? So I'm always on the lookout of like, where can I reduce confusion and add clarity? And the other thing too is because within the way we use TechnoTutor with him, we're always showing him there's multiple definitions, even if he's not learning every definition completely, because there's a lot of context to some of them he wouldn't understand. Within him is the understanding that words can have multiple definitions. So that way, when I point it out later, even if he didn't learn that definition the first time, it's like, oh, okay, it has a new definition. All right. And then he knows it because he can easily take in that new information.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's something I wanted to add into this point. But it's like, he's interested in the things that we've supported him to integrate. So he knows about Transformers, like in terms of the toys, but we're not impulsing him with it. It's like same thing with Santa Claus, right? He knows what that is, but we're not impulsing him with it in an emotional way, right? We're not saying if you're not good, Santa Claus won't bring your toys or anything like that, right? We're not doing that kind of stuff. But he knows that Santa Claus is a character who wears red and all this stuff. Like he understands what it is, right? And he also understands why parents tell their kids about it. And he understands all that because I've explained it to him, right? But my point is, what I really wanted to get across here is we're not hiding stuff from him. Now, if it's something that, well, let me put it this way. We're not impulsing him with Transformer cartoons. So you might call that hiding it from him, but we're not like sitting him down and having him watch those cartoons, for example. But that doesn't mean if a kid has the toy, we're not like, oh, don't look at that. Oh, put that away. Like, it's more like, hey, do you know what that is? I'm not worried about a toy impulsing. You see the difference? Like the cartoon is doing very specific things. The toy is just a toy. I don't care if he plays with the toy, right? If he asked me to buy one of the toys, I would talk to him about it and we would really look at the point, but he hasn't. He didn't look at those toys and be like, whoa, those are so cool. I want those. He'd rather build a robot. You know what I mean? So the point here is he integrates the information that we're supporting him to do. So he's more focused on electric circuits than pretend robots. You see what I mean? Because that's what we've placed in his environment. That's what we've helped him to understand. And we're not confining his environment. You could only learn about electric circuits. But there's only so much that you can give your child at one time.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at a few different toys and you see, okay, here's electric circuits. Here's Transformer toys. Here's what's something else? G.I. Joes, right? I used to play those when I was a kid, right? Which one of those, of the options that I have available, makes the most sense to give my child? Well, the electric circuits, you can actually do something with it. Yeah. And it can go somewhere else with it. You can build upon it and so forth, right? So again, the point I want to emphasize is if you don't give your child some vocabulary, they're going to get some other vocabulary. So if you're not taking any responsibility at home and doing that like we're doing, and then you send your kid to school or you just turn on Netflix, that's what they're going to be learning. So naturally, that's what's going to develop their vocabulary and their understanding and everything and what they want to focus on because it's going to be a part of them. Does that make sense? So in other words, you're indoctrinating them into that cult. But to think that I'm just going to raise my child with no programming, that would be like, would you want to have a computer with no programming?
No.
So we're not saying don't program your kids. It's just, what are you going to program them with is the question. And when you look at it from that perspective, it starts to open things up. You stop coming at things with fear and you start looking objectively at things. So you're no longer reacting to, well, I mean, I don't want my kid to be programmed. It's like, that's not even a point. It's like, what do you want them to be programmed with? Do you want to program with something that's going to dumb them down? That's going to make them be easily open to being manipulated by, reward or punishment? Or is it going to allow someone else to manipulate them into something that's not best for them, for their own purposes or whatever? Or do you want to program them with the ability to understand reality and be interested in how things work? And if there's a problem, how to actually solve it and so forth without getting frustrated or totally losing faith in themselves or whatever, right? But when I want to give some context, but when you guys hear me talk about Pokemon is like, I would never give that to my kid. I could imagine some parents are like, what? Like, what do you mean? Like, come on, like you're going to deprive them of a childhood? Like, do you guys have that sort of, I know you probably don't actually see it that way, but I mean, what does it sound like from the outside perspective, if that makes sense?
Yeah. Well, I guess from my own upbringing, I remember my mom saying like, Pokemon is the devil. and
see, then you have the reaction, right?
Exactly.
Why did she say that?
Because she was like that. Well, she was thinking about this from a more practical standpoint of like, animals don't have powers like that. It's not reality. Like, but she was also thinking of it from the religious point of view of, no one can have power other than God. And so
other than Jesus.
Exactly. So
he is the only one that can shoot lightning bolts, not Pikachu.
not Pikachu, or Dragon Ball Z. That was also the devil. So at a certain point, like I had watched some episodes of these shows and gotten to the point where I was like, this is cool. And I think it was really cool to me because generally speaking, I wasn't allowed to watch cartoons. So I would watch Animal Planet and stuff like that, which I found very interesting. And I got really interested in animals at a young age. But then when I started seeing Pokemon and Dragon Ball Z, that was completely different. And I knew I wasn't supposed to do it. And so it was something that I was drawn to it. And then the reaction from my mom was, that's the devil. You're not allowed to watch that.
I want to add to that point because that's another thing I want to clarify too. And you guys have both been at the house, so you see how we interact with the kids. We don't say, you can't watch that because you're not allowed to, because it's the devil. We actually, like, did your mom explain to you if you're exposed to this stuff, what it would do?
No.
Or was it just like, it's the devil, and the devil means bad, like hell, oh, that sounds really bad. So we're not using any fear. We're just explaining, okay, Max, this is not best for you to be impulsed with, because if you're impulsed with it, the reason why these shows are created is so that you can be sold toys and things later that you otherwise would not be interested in. Like, we explain this to Max so that he can say, oh, okay. So we're getting him to a point where he can understand to make the choice of, I don't want to watch it. And if you don't think a child can do that, then you actually just think that they're only able to be brainwashed. You know what I mean? Because I think a parent was like, well, you can't do that. I mean, you just have to force them. It's like, okay, kind of like a cult leader, right? You know what I mean? Like the things that we're afraid of as a parent of, like, oh, if you shouldn't do these things to your kids. Like, that's actually what parents do. Like, they are the cult leader. They say, well, you must not watch this because that is of the devil and all this other stuff. And it's not explaining to you why. Like, I would rather be in a group where everybody is there by choice and everybody has exactly the same understanding. So there's no leader. You see what I mean? But if you look at our society, are there leaders?
Oh, for sure.
Of course. So it's like we have cults. We have the Chinese cult, the American cult, the French cult, all these different things. And depending on the vocabulary you're given and the experiences you have a certain understanding of things. And you look to certain people to give you guidance and everything. And obviously within that, there's little miniature cults and all that kind of stuff. But I think the reality,
I think a practical way, just to insert this in here, to look at it, because you're saying where we all have the same understanding, and somebody might think, well, that's just brainwashing. You're all just going to have the same understanding. But a real practical way to look at it is, if you're in a math class and only one person actually understands the math, then that's like the equivalent of what we're saying as a cult, versus everyone understands how to get to, this just makes sense. Logically, 1 + 1 = 2. And everyone can see that. Everyone can actually.
But how do they actually do classrooms? How do they actually treat you in a classroom? Do they explain to you why 1 + 1 is 2?
No.
Generally speaking, I mean, when it's something more advanced than that, they don't. Like, do you guys know why you can't divide by 0?
I know you can't.
Do you see what I mean? Like, and I just know because that's something most people are going to be like, no, I don't know why. But you know that you can't.
Right.
That means you've been brainwashed by a cult leader. You see what I mean? It's not a question of whether you've been brainwashed or not. It's, are you following a leader, or are you actually looking at it for yourself as an equal to the information? You see? So a cult leader will ask for adherence to something without you understanding what they understand. Do you think that the Pope actually believes in God?
This is a great question. I don't know what the Pope believes, but
I mean, come on.
I would say.
Do you think he believes what the average Catholic believes? How about that?
No.
Okay. I'll leave it at that. Right. In other words, they don't believe what they're telling everyone. Like, there's a different level of information. Right. Now, I'm not saying the teacher actually understands math better or something, but they're expecting you to just take what they're saying and accept it. But they're not explaining why. The problem is, if you understood why you can't divide by 0, it would actually help your understanding of algebra and numbers and all kinds of other stuff. It would actually support your understanding. more. You'd become better at math if you understood why. You see? But it's built into the system that you're trying to create a situation where some people are at a certain level and other people are at a different level. So our society is developed in a way where it's like that pyramid structure. And so anything that represents people breaking out of that gets labeled with those things automatically, which shows the degree to which people are just following. My Siri thinks I'm talking to her. I'm going to put on airplane mode. Yeah. It shows the degree to which people are just blindly following and are actually a part of a cult. Because anybody who tries to break out of it, they immediately attack you. They try to ostracize you. They try to use fear to get you back in line and everything. And I think we've all probably experienced that to certain degrees, right? For sure. And I mean, even look at, for example, everything that's going on right now. Like take the coronavirus, right? Is it all the cards are on the table? Everyone has access to all the information. It's all very clear. Or is it like you're not really even sure what information you can trust or not?
Yeah.
It's like just accept it.
Yeah. Definitely.
You see what I mean?
I was just having a conversation with some friends of mine a couple of days ago where we were talking about how much misinformation is coming from the same source, where they're saying one thing and then saying the exact opposite a month later or a few weeks later. And it just keeps going back and forth like that.
And then you have like the double think where you'll have someone like YouTube, for example, where they'll say, you can't make a video that contradicts the World Health Organization or something. You can't give information that contradicts it, but the World Health Organization contradicts itself.
Yeah.
So if you had said it based on the first thing they said, but then what they're saying now, technically, according to the rules, they should remove your video. You know, so it's like, well, so the leaders don't actually even know what they're doing. Or is it that they don't know what they're doing or they're deliberately lying to people? I mean, it's kind of hard to even be able to tell, right? But you start seeing like, if there's a leader or a person that everyone thinks is superior in some way, and they say to do something, look around at the world. Look how everyone just does it. I mean, go outside and see how people are wearing masks. You know, and it's funny because when you go to the stores now here in Houston, they took, like one of the grocery stores took down their signs saying that they were going to require everyone to wear them.
Oh.
So why did that change all of a sudden? Like they had signs that said you have to wear a mask. They took the signs down.
That's interesting.
But the actual law didn't change.
So maybe now it's just accepted. It's like, of course it is.
Or they're just like, well, if people come in here, we're not going to try to force them to do it. So because we go in there and they don't tell us to wear it.
Okay.
Huh. Like we talk to the worker and like who's helping you, whatever, they don't say anything.
That's interesting.
Do you see what I mean? But you see everybody else just doing it. And I think there's a degree to what you're saying, Mitch, which is like people are just going along with it. And I see it as, I'm not trying to say it's like a sinister thing, but it's a social experiment to see what we're willing to accept.
Well,
it's like if we say wear a mask, they'll do it. If we say don't wear it, they don't do it. But then we say do it, and then they do it.
That reminds me of how the whole education system was built from, well, this Prussian idea that, oh, we lost to Napoleon, but if we had soldiers who would just follow what their officers had told them, you know, we could have stood a better chance, right? And so then they started indoctrinating kids in schools and just assigning random tasks like, what can we get them to do? Let's see how they can, well, what they'll just blindly follow. And they started having them do jumping jacks and, you know, okay, now read this or recite this or whatever, and just arbitrary things that really had nothing to do with education, really, but just seeing how much they can control their random behaviors. And I feel like it seems like that's what's going on now when even, you know, if your authority figure is telling you this one thing and then going the complete opposite way and you still listen, it's like, oh, you're really bought in. And it seems to me like, based on what you're just saying right now, it's like, that's really what they're testing. How bought in are you?
Well, look at the whole racism thing that's going on right now, the anti-racism.
Ooh.
You know, it's like you can't be racist if you have certain skin colors. And if you have certain skin colors, you're by default racist no matter what you do. But also we need to eradicate racism while simultaneously accepting this definition of racism. So the definition itself is racist and creates racism, while at the same time within it saying we must remove and eradicate racism. All it becomes is an excuse to use it and to apply it when necessary as a weapon, as a competitive weapon against other people. There's no actual solution within any of it. And what's fascinating though about it is when you look at all of the anti-racism training stuff and diversity training that's going on right now, there's like this big push that white people need to dismantle their racism and all that stuff within themselves. Well, isn't that exactly what we've been talking about in the context of learning how your programming works, learning the tools and the understanding to be able to question your beliefs and so forth. So it's funny because whether we personally push and promote the point of self-perfection, that's where the world is moving anyways. It's like the groups and the movements that are demanding why people stop being racist are demanding perfection from them. Do you see what I'm saying? They're demanding them to be perfect within their application of not being racist. But the only thing that can create that kind of perfection is a program. You see what I mean? You have to create a program within yourself which is not racist. Because if you are racist, then the program is going to create that. It can't come from someone just thinking about, okay, I guess I'm racist, therefore I need to stop being racist, so I'm going to try not to be racist and everything. Because that's not really understood of what it really takes to change your beliefs, it just becomes a, hold on, you're white, stop talking. Okay, you're black, you're not white, you can talk. That's all it becomes. It doesn't become any actual, and what all that's going to happen is you're going to have the group who's not white become on top. And the group that's white will become the new black. That's all it's going to, and you see it happening, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, the conversations I keep having with people who are very well-intentioned is they think the solution should be just like at Yale, for instance, they're substituting their teachers who have been there for years or whatever, and who have been good teachers. We want them now to be people of color. Not that they did anything wrong. We just want the faculty to represent, what the students want, essentially. And I'm like, okay, but how is that actually going to solve the big problem? Like, okay, you substitute a few teachers here and there, or you substitute a few leaders here or there, but what is that actually doing for society as a whole?
Well, actually, but it actually exposes what education really is about, doesn't it? Because education was never about producing an effective society. It was about social control, social hierarchy. So what we're seeing is just the next evolution of what the education system has been doing this whole time, creating a hierarchy.
Could you explain that a little bit more?
Meaning, prior to what you're talking about, where they're just like literally replacing people who are white men, whatever the thing is, with people of color, women, black people, whatever the point is. Prior to that becoming a thing, the education system was simply taking kids from different backgrounds and filtering through a system where the kids who had the background where their parents were wealthy or had a high vocabulary, those kids become the doctors and lawyers and businessmen and all that kind of stuff. And then everybody else gets put into the working class. So the purpose of the education system was to structure society to support the 1%'s desire to control society and manage it in the way that where they stay on top.
Yeah.
So that's all that's happening right now. So because the argument that you'll hear is, well, but if you take a teacher who actually knows what they're doing and replace them with a person just because they're a different gender or race or whatever, but it doesn't have the same experience, you're not going to get that person's not actually going to be able to teach the kids. It's like, well, the person wasn't teaching them anyways. Do you see what I'm saying? They weren't actually educating anybody ever anyways. Because if they were, then a dumb kid would go to school and become smart. That never happens. Dumb kids remain dumb, smart kids remain smart. Some smart kids go and do a bunch of drugs and don't ever do anything they're supposed to do, and they get spit out of the system and they don't ever succeed. But that's more to do with emotional instability and other stuff. But if you have a high vocabulary, high IQ, your parents are successful and disciplined, and they enforce discipline at home, then you'll get through the school system and you'll become a doctor or a lawyer or whatever. If you don't have any of those things, the likelihood of you getting those high positions, high paying jobs is very small. That's all it is. So that's why, like I always say, I've been saying this for a while now, I'm not actually against what Black Lives Matter stands for from that perspective, from the perspective that the structures we have in our society are not best for everybody. It's the solutions I don't agree with. You see the difference? It's not that I don't think there is a point where, for example, in certain contexts, a person's skin color will be used as a way to dominate or to exclude or take advantage or get an advantage over them because it's somehow in the context of that situation, it gives them an advantage or a disadvantage or whatever, simply because of the way people are using it. But the solution to that isn't, okay, let's then divide society up based on race and put everybody of a certain percentage. It's like, so what about, okay, like there's like, I think less than 20% of America is like Black, like meaning African descent, right? So we can only ever have 20% of Black people be successful then. Like, that doesn't make sense.
No.
And then whatever the percentages of white, only 60% or whatever can be successful. And the rest of them, okay, all of you weren't in that 60% and that 20% whatever. So now you have to be in poverty just so it can look like everybody's represented.
Right.
But is it important that we have a society where the percentages of the population are represented in certain areas? Or is it more important that we have everybody in our society highly educated?
Highly educated.
Because if everybody were highly educated and had the most effective vocabulary, wouldn't it sort of sort itself out that everybody would be in the position that they need to be in to give to society in the best way so that we all get the sort of best of everybody? And it would all be by free choice. Like, why should you put someone in a position just because of their skin color? What is that? What value does that give you? Now, the problem is if you reject that thinking, then you think the only other option is just keep everything the way it is. That also is very stupid. But it's like looking at the symptom rather than the actual cause. And this is like, for example, where you have the parenting point where people are like, well, don't watch Pokemon because it's the devil. Well, it's not actually the devil because the devil doesn't exist. So that's not a valid reasoning as to why you shouldn't watch Pokemon. I'm not saying it's because God said thou shalt not watch Pokemon or some shit like that. What I'm saying is it's impulsing your child with fantasy bullshit that you're not correcting. They're not clearly understanding that it's not real. It's also, like, think about this. What's the storyline of a Pokemon episode? What's the general basic plot themes?
Competition. Like
competition.
Battle, win, lose.
Being the best, as
down.
in you have to be better than everybody else and they have to lose.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing yourself as some sort of special something where you're like unique and special and everybody else is just average, or I mean, I don't know, but it's just the same shit that's in any other thing.
Yeah.
It's these very specific viruses, like mind viruses, that are going to create dysfunctional behavior in people. When your child's watching Pokemon, for example, or Disney or whatever, that's what they're learning. It's not about the Pikachu character. That's just the interesting cover for the actual message, which is, why are they fighting with each other? Why are you teaching kids that excitement is fighting, for example? Like if your child watched Pokemon and then grew up to be like a underground dog fighter, would you be proud of that?
No.
Because I would think that'd be like the natural progression of things. Like, you're gonna like create some like underground ring of genetically modified animals and have them fight each other. Like, isn't that literally what you're fucking putting your kids in front of and then acting like it's cool? But then the question is, why do they want the Pokemon cards? Why do they want the Pokemon toys? Why do they want to go and watch the Pokemon movie now after they see the show? Because that's the purpose of it. It's a company figured out a way to sell shit to kids. That's all it is. And like, why do adults, think about this. Why do so many adults like Marvel movies?
Because that's what they grew up with.
Right. When we were kids, when I was a kid, they had like the X-Men cartoons and shit.
Yeah.
So now they're just giving it to the adults so that the adults will take their kids to it and they can sell shit to their kids.
Yeah.
It's all that's happening. So like if you don't see Marvel Comics as a cult, or if you don't see Transformers or any of this shit as a cult, it's just a fucking cult where they just want you to just buy their shit. That's all it is.
Yeah.
So, and I know we'll get eventually at some point haters who will say the same thing about us.
Yeah.
So I'm saying right on the record, it's okay. I don't mind that we're a cult because everything is a fucking cult.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Like you have to have a culture. But what we're doing is saying, look, this is what we've realized. Here's the tools. Here's how everybody can get on the same page of processing reality. So wouldn't that be the best culture to have? Is everybody is able to process and choose for themselves and do what's best based on that.
Because cult is looking at a leader, some sort of idol, and like worshiping that's above you, and then you're part of that. You accept it and you buy in. Where what we're saying is, let's raise everybody up so we can all be equally responsible to then sort out this world and make it a place that's best for everybody. So we don't need to keep worshiping some thing.
Yeah. The thing that will be better than all of us will be the it'll be like an emergent property of all of us being at our best. It won't be an entity separate from us that is superior to us. It'll be something that we can't create individually, or if we're all separated from each other into like specific groups that are competing. When we're all really in harmony through free choice, when we're all in harmony in that way, something will emerge from that we can't predict right now, but that will transcend anything that we could ever possibly create otherwise. And it won't be something that exists otherwise. So you can't say it's a superior higher being because it doesn't already exist. It's just it's be a manifestation of something. It'll just be the experience of being in a world that's really fucking awesome. You know, and then you have the cult of capitalism. People are like, well, capitalism has lifted more people out of poverty since blah, 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 better than any other system. And it's like, okay, yeah, let's say it's better than any other system. Fine. Okay. But there's still 8 million children died last year from preventable causes. So how is that acceptable? Well, if we just keep going, like eventually it'll work itself out. But capitalism produced the education system, which is now apparently brainwashing kids to be communists. How does that work? Who created the fucking education system? Marxists or industrialists?
Yeah, industrialists.
Who is it that everyone knows the government is in their pockets?
Oh, the corporations.
So you're telling me the corporations, which are extreme capitalists, are also communists?
Clearly not.
Because it doesn't make people can't process these points. So what you have as communists is really just a bunch of kids trying to play revolutionary. And I see this stuff on Facebook. I was just talking shit with somebody on, I think it was one of Jess's posts the other day. Because it's like people think that revolution and rebelling is going to change anything. And it's like, what is it going to change? It's not a solution. You're just trying to break shit because you're upset, which I understand. Like I empathize with the point. But what is it actually going to create? Because how is a revolution going to make sure that every child has what my kids have? Because the only way to do that is if the people interacting with that child on a regular basis understand what we understand, but then also are taking time and spending time with that kid and developing their vocabulary and explaining things and putting them in the right environments. And instead, I see parents on Twitter, I see videos where they have their infant strapped to their chest in the protests with like fucking tear gas and like fireworks and shit going on. And they're like, we just wanted them to know, you know, we wanted them to witness history. And also we wanted them to know, you know, that we stood up when we were called, you know, when it was time, like we stood up, like we didn't just go along with the Nazis and all that shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but that's like a mind that that's a game they're playing in their mind rather.
Exactly.
It's super interesting to see that because it's clearly child abuse. Why would you subject your child to an environment where they could be tear gassed?
And also, do they know what the fuck's going on?
No, they have no clue. That child was 6 months old in that video.
If you've been around children that you haven't severely psychologically damaged to the point of desensitization, children that are still sensitive, you'll notice they pick up on every sound. Like you'll notice with Max, if you're in a room and there's like some electrical sound or something that occurs, he'll go, what is that? Why is that? What is that sound? Like he'll notice when there's something different happening in the environment. It's just like animals. Like if there's fireworks going on, how do animals act?
Oh, they're scared.
They're scared because they're like, what the fuck's happening? They're like, are bombs going off? They don't know what's going on. They don't understand people are doing fireworks. They're excited to see the pictures and stuff, like the lights and all that. The animals don't understand. They just hear loud noises and they're like, fuck, fuck, fuck. So that's how children are when you take them into an environment like that.
Yeah.
You're literally psychologically and physically abusing them when you do that kind of stuff. It's the same thing that happens in schools, but you put the kids in schools and then over years they become desensitized to it, where it just seems like it's normal now, but it's not normal, you know? So when I looked at that point of, you know, where were you in 2020 and so forth, right? Like this is what we were doing, right? Not just this podcast. We do a lot of other things. We work together and so forth, but this is a big part of that, is like saying this stuff is fucking crazy. Like this is not in any way normal whatsoever. But the other thing that's important to realize is that idea that if we just stick to capitalism, it'll fix all the problems eventually. The problems we're seeing right now are a fundamental part of that. You see what I mean? It's like, for example, parents, always say like their teenagers are little assholes, right?
Yeah.
That's because of the way you're parenting them from the beginning. That's why. Because at a certain point, you know what they realize? My parents don't actually fucking know everything, because I'm smart enough to see that now. And second of all, you fucked me over. Like you didn't prepare me for anything. It's a subconscious point, but they realize that, and then they try to challenge the parents because they're like, fuck, man, like I see how fucked up this world is, and you're just trying to tell me to do certain things that clearly don't work for you, even though within you wanted to do all the things you're telling me not to do, and you did them all when you were a kid, for example. So same thing, like I guarantee your mom probably, when she was a kid, there was something that she wasn't supposed to look at from her mom, and she did it anyways, and the mom told her it was from the devil, and all that kind of stuff. But then they'll just demand that of their child, but not explain any of it.
Yeah. No, definitely there's a lot of things my mom wasn't allowed to do that she ended up doing anyway. So but it's interesting that I think we talked about this on the last podcast. Like that's the reaction that people go into. They just do the opposite, or they think they're doing the opposite, but then they're actually still perpetuating the same thing, the same starting point, the same feeling.
That's what's going on with all of the protests.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. They think that they're going to change something, but they're just going to perpetuate the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Because how does the result of any of these protests, like think about it. You're protesting, okay? Mm-hmm. If you're a protester, what is it that you expecting the government to do in response to your protest?
Change.
Yeah, change.
How?
Just fix it.
But do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
If the government knew what to do, why wouldn't they already do it?
Well,
and if you're saying they're,
from the perspective of a protester, let me just actually play this role, I mean. Right? From the perspective of a protester, they're not doing it because they want to continue this systemic racism or whatever. They're in a position of power and they don't want to change because, then they have to give up their power. And so what I would assume if I were a protester, or from the people that I've talked to, what I actually want the government to do is get rid of dirty cops and get rid of a lot of cops in general. And maybe we don't even need cops. Maybe we just need, I've been seeing this going around. We just need people within the communities who are trained to deal with like domestic disputes and things like that. We don't need guns going in for that. Or if you're a drunk driver, a paramedic should show up, not a police officer with a gun. That just escalates the situation even more. And those are the arguments that I've heard as far as what they actually expect to happen and take place. And I see
so now let's just think about this for a moment, okay?
Yeah.
let's say we just get rid of all these police, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Isn't it very likely that there's going to be a lot of people who are not doing anything right now who are like, oh, there's no more police.
For sure.
I'm going to go take whatever the fuck I want. No one's going to stop me.
Didn't we
Who
just
aren't
see
doing
that?
it right now. It's like they're not even consciously not doing it right now, but they're going to say, who's going to fucking stop me?
Didn't we just see that with the riots?
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't that an example, like a very clear example?
Even here in Minneapolis, all around my, like I look on Nextdoor. Ever since the riots, I just at least got it so I could see what's going on, what are people saying, and it's pretty wild, even within a few blocks of me, how much crime has gone up. Like there's a lot of like muggings and different things. Like in the middle of the day, people's cars being stolen, people getting jumped, like right around here, and it's like a pretty nice part of town. And so, I mean, obviously that's my own qualitative experience. I
But
don't
isn't
know the
that
full
obvious
data.
that would happen?
It makes sense, and I'm like, well, all right. So after 8 p.m., I'm staying inside. I'm like,
See,
damn.
so what kind of society are we going to create by just going along with the demands of these protesters?
There's going to be less order.
Everybody's going to want to stay at home. They're already preparing for this. And that's what I'm seeing is more than anything else, more than controlling a virus or anything of that stuff, that's what the masks are really about. Is seeing the level to which we're willing to just go along with things out of fear. And let me ask you this. Have you not been eating out less?
Oh, for sure. 100%. You
Why?
know I love to eat out. I
Why?
love to eat out because, well, first they closed down all the restaurants.
Okay.
Then when they open them back up, you know, you have to make a reservation or something like that. And then on top of that, now they expect me to go in there and adhere to like these weird rules that are, that's not the experience that I go to a restaurant for.
Right.
You know? And so it's not comfortable anymore. It's not as enjoyable.
Like imagine going to a restaurant and everyone's talking really loud, not like obnoxiously loud, but there's hustle and bustle. You're with your group of friends, you're having a good time. Now it's like you go to the restaurant and it's like everything, you have to be very quiet and, you know,
yeah,
like it's so people are going to want to stay home more and more and more. And then I don't know if you saw this on Fox or Fox News or MLB or whoever the fuck it was. They announced that they're going to have like virtual crowds in their
Fox
stadiums.
Sports. Yeah.
So it's like they're putting just like the digital crowds into the stands. There's not even anyone in the fucking stands anymore.
Yeah.
Right. So it's all just pushing towards the point where eventually people will stay at home. Because think about this. Then let's say a company comes out and they're like, we've created an immersive online virtual environment where you can go to the mall, you can go to the restaurant, and you can be with your friends, and it's all virtual avatars.
Dude, that's already out.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not widely adopted yet.
Not yet, no. But like just not even 30 minutes from me, they have a virtual mall where
really,
yeah, it's completely set up. This is like one of the more like quickly developing places near Orlando, but they have it set up where everything that you want, you just basically go on an iPad or whatever, and you dress yourself via the iPad. And so they have maybe one garment that's that specific size if you wanted to try it on and all that kind of stuff. But then you don't actually take anything home with you. They send a drone to your home, which is just, or they mail it to you or whatever. Mm-hmm. It's pretty futuristic.
Imagine when we get to the point where people literally just stay at home. You buy clothes for your avatar.
Mm-hmm.
you like literally you're just at home and you're interacting with people through online. And it's just a matter of technology getting to that point. But could you see people accepting it?
Yeah. I don't see how it's not going to happen. I mean, maybe it takes 10 more years, 15 more years, but it's like I don't think we could prevent that per se. Rather, it's about us now directing it to what's actually best and supporting. It's kind of like Uber and self-driving cars. It's like I don't think we could stop it if we tried, but how do we ensure that we direct this so that we keep people doing it from a real starting point of like principle and being responsible, you know, so we can move into the future so it's actually best for everybody, where we all maintain some sense of responsibility and like who we are, instead of just going into a future where it's like Wall-E, or if you've seen that movie where everyone's
Yeah.
like in their wheelchair, being badasses.
This kind of reminds me of like, how everybody says that we live in the Matrix, right? Or some people will say that. It's almost as if we're creating the Matrix. It's almost like a loop. Like you're in the Matrix and then you create the Matrix and then you just continue doing that further and further. And so eventually, people will recognize each other as their avatars, and then, it'll get even deeper and deeper than that. That's what it feels like is happening right now,
Think about the people who are creating all this technology, right? Do they actually have within them the starting point of what's best for everybody?
No. They're doing it because they get
what's their starting point? Right.
They're either doing it for a paycheck, or they think it's so cool to be on some part of like cutting edge project, not actually seeing it through to what's going to happen.
So let's say somebody says, oh, I mean, actually that would be really great, because then if everybody was like in a virtual world, then, everybody would be equal, and then there wouldn't be any more problems and all that stuff. It'd just be really great. And I'm like, okay, so in a virtual world, do you have to eat?
Not in the virtual world.
Okay, in your physical world, do you have to eat?
Yes.
And do you require the best nutrients? Otherwise, you're going to have not. Okay, so who's going to guarantee that happens?
Yeah.
In the real world.
Yeah, in the real world.
Like the idea that you can just replace physical reality with virtual reality, and like, is it possible? Yeah, like it is. I have no doubt that is where things will go, but that's not the world I would want to live in. Meaning, I would like. It's not to say there wouldn't be any advantage of being able to go into a virtual environment in particular contexts, but that's not real physical reality. And who would be directing the programming of that virtual reality? Would they be doing it in a way where it was best for everybody? Or would it be based on what you can afford? Like, why would anyone be sitting there doing the work of programming it if they weren't getting paid to do it? And therefore, wouldn't there still be profit motive based in it?
Yeah. On top of that, like, there wouldn't be equality within, you going into the virtual reality, because, I can buy these clothes and that shows your avatar is really rich,
Yeah, exactly. Otherwise, why would they want to do it? Wouldn't you eventually get really bored with it if literally you go in there and like, you could just do anything you want, everyone to do the same thing? Mm-hmm. So unless we change our inherent nature of needing competition and all that stuff, it's just going to turn into an external or a virtual reflection of what we already have here. And it's not going to change poverty or any of that. Mm-hmm. What would be the incentive?
Hey, that's a really cool point. That it's not that we can't have equality within a virtual world or whatever, or that it wouldn't work. It's that we have to change our starting point as far as how we think of competition and how we think we have to exist. Like, for instance, something very practical that Andrew Yang has brought to, more popular speaking terms, I guess, within the US, universal basic income. But then we have the starting point of, if you're not working, then you're a lazy SOB or whatever. Or, on the other end, you have the other arguments that are just like, well, you can't just give money. We don't have the money to give. And like, there's all these ideas that people hold on to where,
why was Andrew Yang the only one seriously talking about UBI?
He's the only one who could actually understand it.
But I mean, like there's a kind of relatively popular term, thing on the left, which is like reparations for slavery, right?
Yeah.
Wouldn't a UBI do that?
Wouldn't that just eliminate the need for that?
And like, if it really became a point where literally every Democratic candidate, congressman, whatever, or congressperson, senator, at every level was like, no, we stand for everybody having enough money that they don't ever need to worry about survival or anything, then why wouldn't everybody go along with that? Like, if I say, no, only Black people get it because of slavery, then who's going to go for that?
Only Black people.
Yeah, and maybe other people who feel like it's the right thing to do, but certainly not everybody, because they're like, well, but how come I don't get something? Like,
right.
My parents were never slave owners or anything like that. I mean, my ancestors came here and like already like the late 1800s from like Germany, you know, so it's like they weren't doing slaves, you know, like, so I I didn't benefit from that. So could I also get some because I don't have the advantage of having owned slaves or what? You know what I mean? Like you would have people who would start to ask like, well, why can't I also have that? Or I have all this student debt. Like, what am I supposed to do? And
Yeah.
if you just said everybody gets it, why wouldn't everyone be like, well, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And
Actually,
then of course you have the program of, you know, well, you have to work for money and all this bullshit, which the elite don't believe, right? What were you going to say, Jake?
I was going to say, I was just looking through Twitter yesterday, and Trump had retweeted this guy who was talking about how the House of Representatives shot down a bill for $1.8 trillion that was basically supposed to go to the people. And he's like, why would anyone disagree with this? It doesn't make sense. Like, everyone would be getting money. Like, this shows that there's like, these people, they just want power. They just want power. And it should be something that is actually representing the people. Like, I'm sure no person who that would have benefited, which would every American citizen would have voted against that, right? And it's interesting, you know, the point of reparations, like that point is really, it makes you special. It gives you the ability. It's the same thing that people complain about as far as what's wrong with the elite, is that they have this power and they want to keep their power. And if they were to give up their money, then they wouldn't be, not give up their money, but if we had as much money as them, then they wouldn't be in a position of power anymore. And that's exactly what we're advocating for, isn't it? Just being everyone equal, everyone having the same capabilities. But then there's also that point of, are you actually equal as far as what you are able to do? And that comes from education.
You know, I was just considering this point. Let's say you take a conservative family. Would that family want their life to get better if they could?
Yeah, hell yeah.
Okay. Let's say you take a liberal family or democratic, whatever the hell. Same thing, right?
Yeah.
Is there anybody on the planet that doesn't want their life to get better?
Not that I can think of.
You could even be like a freaking hardcore MS-13 gang member. Don't they want their life to get better too?
Yeah, even for their
Oh,
family.
I wouldn't think. Okay. So why is there an objection to the world being as best as it possibly can for everyone?
People don't understand what that would actually look like.
Okay, so that's definitely a major issue, is they can't understand what that would look like. But does anyone actually disagree in principle that if it means your life would improve and not be diminished, then you would want that, right? Even if everybody else's also was improved.
Yeah.
100%.
So why is it that people don't want that?
They can't actually fathom it. They have these programs or these feelings and emotions that they hold on to from what they've been educated with, that basically says they can't do that and they shouldn't strive to do that.
So have we not been programmed to specifically believe we're not allowed to do that?
Maybe.
We're not allowed to do it.
Yeah.
We're not allowed to. That's not a possibility. Just accept that it's not a possibility. But at the same time, keep complaining and fighting and struggling to try to improve your life.
Yeah. That's a great point. Like, what's the point of complaining if you don't even think it's a possibility?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
If you really don't think it's a possibility well, I mean, it can always get better, but you know, it can't be perfect. It's like this belief that everybody has. It cannot be perfect. Okay, well then what level of perfection should it be at? And then why should a conservative person argue that Black Lives Matter is protesting? Or that the football players and the baseball players are kneeling for the national anthem? You said it can't be perfect. Well, I mean, you know, it can be, at least everybody doesn't, you know, have to kneel. It's like, well, okay. But can you see, like, you have these differences in opinion about, and all it really is
to what degree can we strive for before you say no? That's Like,
Right. Where's the actual specific limits so we can just all get on that same page?
right.
And it's like the real reason why conservatives give a fuck if people kneel for the flag, which I don't think people should be kneeling for the flag. I'm not saying that they should, but the reason why they actually care is just because they've been programmed from a young age to have an emotional attachment that you're patriotic if you stand for it. And it's like I'm a good person because I support the people who died in World War II because they sacrificed for me, and I recognize that, and that's what makes me a good person. That's what allows me to deserve to continue having a certain level of freedom. But what I always find ironic about it is, but if you're saying that they died for your right to protest, but then you're disagreeing with how that they shouldn't protest, wouldn't the people who are kneeling and protesting be more honoring the memory of the people who died for that right than the people who are saying you shouldn't?
Yeah.
Like, you see what I'm saying? Like, if you're saying that the soldiers died so you could have that right to kneel for that flag, so you should stand. It's like, well, if I kneel, it actually brings attention to the fact that the sacrifice was made and that I'm exercising that right, because only in communist China would I not be allowed to do it.
Right. Right.
So it's like, we're just going to try to enforce it through social pressure that you shouldn't do it. And now, at the same time, this is also being exploited. This freedom to protest is being exploited specifically to impulse everybody with the idea that the United States of America is absolute shit. And we should just get rid of the whole thing. Fuck it. It's irrelevant. There's no value to it whatsoever. So we don't even need it.
Yeah.
That's what the actual kneeling is designed to do. So on the one hand, it actually is doing the thing that conservatives are saying they're upset about. But it's like they're caught in a catch-22 but you're supposed to have the right to do it. So then it brings into question, should you have the right to just do whatever you want or not? Or should there be limits? And should it be enforced in a dictatorial sort of autocratic way, or should it be a free choice? Because if you're going to allow free choice, then you have to allow the freedom that people could choose otherwise.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
But then the question is, if the system was actually best for everybody, why the fuck would anybody be protesting?
Hey, let's go down that road of free choice for a little bit.
Okay.
So we have free choice as human beings, right? And in our society, we have a lot of free choice. Obviously, there are things that you can't do, right? But to what extent is free choice warranted, as far as, because in order to keep up a society, everyone has to participate. Obviously, you're not allowed to kill someone, right? Because
hold on, wait, you just jumped ahead there. Should you be allowed to do whatever you want or not?
No.
Okay, so you see, like, already we're saying you shouldn't be allowed to kill people.
Yeah.
I would argue that that's not what free choice means.
Okay.
What do you mean?
What's your perspective?
Free choice is you have the ability to choose what is best of your own free will. You have the ability to choose it. You have the ability to choose whether you're going to kill somebody or not. Does that mean we should allow people to kill people? Just because you have the ability to choose?
So when you say you have the ability to choose, I'm imagining in my mind, like, I don't know if you ever saw the movie Minority Report, where...
Yeah. But do you understand the difference between permission versus ability to choose?
Yeah.
I have the ability to choose right now to just bash my head in with a hammer.
Mm-hmm.
I have the ability to do that.
Right.
Like, so does that mean I should do it?
No.
Okay. If I saw you were about to do it to yourself, or you saw I was about to do it, wouldn't you try to stop me?
Yeah, for sure, 100%.
Or if I was trying to do it to somebody else, wouldn't you try to stop me?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Would you be like, well, no, everyone has a right to choose?
No.
See, it's like we start getting into this difference in the way we're looking at it. There's two different ways of looking at it. One is you actually have the ability to choose. And one other one is whether you should choose that or not. If somebody was properly educated, would they ever choose to do what wasn't best?
No.
Why would they? Why would they ever choose to do something that's against their own self-interest if they fully understood the consequences?
They wouldn't, because they would understand the consequences. They would understand how that would come back to bite them later on.
And isn't the idea that we're always trying to choose what's in our best interest?
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's just that we have this idea of self-interest, which is really just a limitation of vocabulary. Because the way you're defining yourself is you believe in this magical thing that because there's some kind of God or something else that takes responsibility for everything, you can really just choose to do whatever you feel like or whatever you desire or whatever your opinions are. And you should have that right to do that. But nobody actually believes that about other people. They only believe it about themselves and the people that they have defined as themselves, like their family or whatever. But even within your own family, you don't believe that, oh, only if you hurt somebody. That's what they say, right? Well, you don't have the right to hurt somebody. But then what does it mean to hurt somebody? Because from the way I'm looking at it, based on what I understand, letting your child watch Pokemon is hurting them.
Okay, well, what about these people who are getting emotionally upset? They're hurt by that you would even say those things about Pokemon.
Right. Have they understood and developed the ability to take responsibility and question where that emotion is coming from?
Likely no.
Okay. So are they not hurting themselves?
Yeah.
So am I hurting them by saying you shouldn't watch Pokemon? Or are they hurting themselves by holding on to an emotional attachment that's actually not in their best interest?
Yeah.
How do you
And
know it's not in their best interest?
And you're hurting them too by not speaking up and saying it because you see
Right.
it.
Because I'm allowing it.
Yeah.
Because all that there's nothing that watching Pokemon is doing for you that is best for you. Name the one thing that's best for you about it.
About watching Pokemon?
Yeah.
Well, you feel good. I mean, if you've been indoctrinated with that.
Same thing about heroin, though.
I believe that I can win. I can win a competition.
Right? But can you win any competition? Because you watched Pokemon?
No.
Why didn't you just spend time focusing on the competition you want to win? All it does is just brainwash children to buy Pokemon shit. That's literally all it's doing. There is zero value whatsoever. In fact, when they did the research, we've talked about this before, Sesame Street was created as part of the, what was it? The Head Start or whatever initiative, right?
Yeah.
And they did it because, they wanted to help these underprivileged kids get more exposure to alphabet and all this stuff. When they did the studies, they found it only helped the kids who already had an advantage.
Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't actually help them. It didn't help anybody. It didn't do anything. This is not how learning works. It's just a bunch of bullshit. It's making it look like you're doing something when you're not really. And think about this. That way they can get funding for their public whatever foundations and so forth. One of the biggest sources of propaganda is NPR. It's just straight up propaganda.
Yeah.
But doesn't everybody who listens to it think like, oh no, I'm an intellectual, I listen to NPR?
Oh, for sure.
Can you explain that more? Because I've been fascinated about this because my mom loves listening to NPR. She's
Just
like,
fucking turn it on. Listen to it.
I haven't listened to it in a while, but it's like, could you help me understand that? Because I hear them at the end of each episode. They're like, NPR is possible.
Have you ever heard
donations from
the Carnegie Foundation
and
the fucking Ford Foundation? You're like, all the people that I guarantee you the Black Lives Matter or whoever would be like, fuck those people.
Yeah.
These white supremacists, the actual white supremacists. They're funding NPR, which NPR is telling everybody you should support Black Lives Matter. Isn't that weird?
You would think that if they were against that, they would pull their funding.
The NPR is just a way of having a bunch of people hear the same message. That's all it is. It's just like any other media. But within you have this feeling like it's like highbrow.
Yeah.
but listen to it actually. You don't learn anything when you're listening to it. It's just a character that thinks they're elite gets to participate in. So it's like, imagine if you're actually elite and you're like, I want to brainwash all the people who think they're fucking elite. Okay, I'm going to create something called NPR and put all the music and the speakers and everything so it sounds all fancy and shit so I can brainwash all you motherfuckers. And then all the dumb people, I'm going to brainwash you using MTV. It's the same thing. It's fundamentally no different whatsoever. It has a specific agenda.
Yeah.
And you never hear anyone on NPR saying, you know, why does poverty even exist? How do we actually stop poverty at the root level? How do we create a system that's best for all? And they only talk about that. That's never discussed. Mm-hmm. When is it ever discussed? Like, okay, we're going to do a series on how a parent from the very beginning influences their child and develops the child's personality and character from the beginning, even before they go to school. Or is it, we're going to do an expose on school choice versus public school funding? It's always at the level of the consumer system is already accepted.
Yeah.
It only sees you as a consumer of information, not as an active participant in reality.
And at what level do you think that decision on what goes in the programming, is that in the boardroom? I mean, obviously this is just speculation, but is that in the boardroom? Do you think the CEO or whoever it is who runs NPR is aware too that they're just brainwashing people? Or like, do you think they earnestly believe we are bringing the right information to the public?
Let's say you went to work for NPR.
Mm-hmm.
And then you said to your boss, you want to do a series called Self-Perfected, and you just did this stuff. Mm-hmm. Would they let that happen?
I mean, it would have to fit into, I'm sure they would change it up so it fits into their thing.
What if you wanted to say, I want to do a series on exposing Black Lives Matter as a terrorist organization?
The answer would be no.
And I have all the research, and it's all right here. Would they even look at it?
Yeah, you could even give them.
What if you said, I want to do an expose talking about how Trump is creating a fascist dictatorship in America?
Oh, green light.
So it's kind of like, it's like if you went to somebody's house who, like, there was a couple and they were super into like heavy metal music, and you started playing like fucking, I don't even know, country music. Would they be like okay with that?
No.
Or would they be like, oh, that's terrible, turn that off?
Yeah.
So it's like, it's not even about they got together beforehand. Okay, now we're only going to allow these kinds of music or these kinds of things. It's just, that's what they've accepted. That's what they resonate with. Anything else that doesn't fit in, it's like, no, that's not accepted. Would you even have made it through the interview process to become an NPR producer?
I see. No.
You know what I mean? Like, so it's not like it has to be some big now there is certainly a level at which the people who are providing all the funding and stuff are providing it in a certain way to influence certain things. And that's why they do it. Just like, you know, when we read Ben Franklin's autobiography, and he knew he could actually influence people's opinions based on his newspapers that he had. He could put that out there and influence people's opinions. You think the person who fucking owns 20% of the New York Times doesn't think about the fact that they own 20% of the New York Times, and like they could influence people like over time to like in some way that would benefit them? Why should it's funny because why should the press be privately owned? Why should it be based on profit in any way whatsoever? You know, and why is it that like you'll never see actually really critical? Okay, think about this, the whole coronavirus thing, right? Anybody that's reporting to us on it, that's in the mainstream, are any of them receiving funding from the pharmaceutical companies?
Yeah.
So if it were true that the coronavirus at some level was not what it was being said to be, and you would have to start questioning the medical industry or, you know, understanding of what a virus is or anything that would put into question the profits of pharmaceutical companies at any level. Would any of that ever make it onto the news?
No.
Because if there was, don't you think there's somebody watching the news going, hey, whoa, what is this person talking about? Immediately pull that.
Yeah.
And so you saw that with like David Icke and all these people. they're gone. They are gone. They don't like what, no one's even talking about that anymore.
Yeah.
That's weird.
Did he used to be on TV? I don't know his backstory.
No, I'm not saying he was on TV. It's just the conversation was shut down, removed, gone.
Mm-hmm.
So it's obviously coordinated. You know, Stefan Molyneux, he was on YouTube. He had over 1 billion views on his channel.
Yeah.
They just removed his channel, just completely gone, done, no explanation, nothing. Didn't even address it. Gone. And I was just checking the other day. I was on my Twitter, and I'm like, I haven't seen a tweet from Stefan Molyneux in a long time. His Twitter's not even on there.
Oh, wow.
I don't see him on. I don't know for sure that he's been removed, but I couldn't find him.
Huh.
He wouldn't come up in my searches, nothing. So is that a coincidence? Why did he get removed from YouTube? Because maybe that was a YouTube thing, but now he's not on Twitter?
That's what happens when you get blacklisted.
Exactly. It's all coordinated. Like, how is it coordinated? What's the conversations? I have no idea. You know, but like we have conversations outside of this podcast, don't we?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That we're maybe talking about things that we're not going to specifically say on the podcast. That's normal. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. Don't you think when the CEO of Exxon and other company or whatever go and have a barbecue and they invite all their friends that are at their level over, don't you think they're discussing like other stuff that they're not going to talk about with their employees or whatever? I mean, come on.
Sure. Yeah.
So of course that stuff happens. Like if you were at that level, you don't get to that level by being a nice person. You don't get to that level in this system through the current means by just trying to do the right thing. You get it. You're in that position because you know you can control with it. That's why they're there. And think about it. If you're a celebrity that has the ability just kind of naturally to influence a lot of people, is a record label going to let you have that platform, or TV channel or whatever going to let you have that platform and then just say whatever you want?
No.
The only reason they put you there in the first place was why?
So you could say what they want.
So so they can make money.
Hmm.
So they can make money. And if you say something that makes one of their friends lose money, don't you think their friends can be like, hey, can you like tell your guy to stop that?
Yeah.
It's like all just a big networked unspoken thing that it's like, well, how come you don't hear about it? Because the media is controlled. So it's not like the media is going to tell you about how they're deliberately brainwashing you. Why would they?
So here's an interesting thing, because you said earlier that the news shouldn't be privately owned. Well, nobody trusts the government either. So it shouldn't be state owned. How would
I know, but what I said after that was that it shouldn't be for profit.
Oh, okay.
That's what I clarified. Yeah.
Okay.
That's the problem. Now, the problem is in this system, if you make it non-profit, it's still the same thing. It's not going to fundamentally change. I'm not saying there's a scenario currently where you could somehow tweak something and then it's all going to be great.
Okay.
But like, we're not doing this for profit per se. We're just speaking.
Yeah, that's true.
In other words, we don't have an advertiser that's going to be like, hey, I didn't like what you guys said, so you can't talk about that. We're filtering ourselves based on what we see as best to explain or not explain. That's not what the news does. The news deliberately is creating perceptions. And like, if you think about it, if that was your full-time focus, wouldn't you be aware that that's what you're doing? Like, wouldn't you be aware of the degree to which you're influencing people's perception based on how you present things? Like when you go to film school, aren't they teaching you that?
Yeah.
You know, like when you go to journalism school, aren't they teaching you that stuff? Just like when you take a statistics course, they teach you how you can lie. They don't tell you to lie. They're just showing you how you can by changing sample sizes and things like that. They're showing you this is how you could manipulate it. Don't do it, you know, but like, you know, they don't even say that. It's just like, wait, I'm like taking the course. And I'm like, it just said right there, you could change it by changing the sample size. I'm like, what? How does no one realize this? But how many people can process that point? Very few.
Yeah.
Right. So if you bring it all back to the kind of the original point we were talking about, you, society, people, individuals, children, everybody is being brainwashed by something. You know, that point you brought up about mathematics. Learning mathematics, to learn mathematics, you have to brainwash yourself. Because there's no baby that comes into the reality knowing mathematics.
Right.
I know because I have kids and I had to teach them what 1 + 1 is.
Yeah.
I had to teach them how to count objects.
Yeah.
They don't know how to count objects. Like at a certain age, they'll have 3 things. They'll be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They'll just keep going until they want to stop.
Yeah.
You have to teach them. You stop on after each one has been counted once. And if you count them in the correct sequence, the last number you end on is the number of things.
Yeah.
They have to make that realization. That's brainwashing. People might object and say that's not brainwashing because they think brainwashing is something negative.
Right.
Just like they think culture or cult, all of that is negative.
Yeah.
But you'll notice the way they define the word cult is they say that there's a leader, right? And if you look at the actual definition, there's like a charismatic, or people are obsessive about something or other. But name one thing in society that isn't like that. Because if I said, okay, well, therefore Disney's a cult, what would they say?
Well, Disney's dead. He can't be the leader. Or, well, I guess Mickey would be the leader.
But isn't it just magic itself, the magic of whatever or some bullshit? That's what you're obsessive over.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Somebody would object to it and say, well, no, that's not. But that is. You know? Like we were joking around with somebody's house the other day, and they had gotten this Star Wars thing. It was like some Lego set for their kid or whatever, and it was like this super complex thing, right? And we were talking about like the age for it, right? They were like, what age do you think it's for? And I was like, it's probably 40 plus. It's for like 40 plus people like in their basement or whatever. And I was joking, like it has to be a thing that says like, please ask your parents to help you assemble it, or whatever. But I mean, think about it. Who was programmed super heavily by Star Wars?
Yeah, the previous generation.
Yeah, like people like I have some uncles that are like 10 years older than me.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm 36, right? So it was in the 70s. They got super heavily programmed. And then they brought it back again later when I was like in, I think, middle school or high school. And then they brought it back again, and now Disney's bought it, right? So Disney has figured out how to take the Star Wars brand and then bring even more people into Disney and so forth.
Yeah.
But when you look at how Disney is programming people and kids, it's insane. And they've taken the whole Star Wars thing and they've used that to bring in like the sort of like leftist, like feminism, racial diversity, all that kind of programming into the whole scenario. Because now they've got all these kids that are through Disney focused on Star Wars. You've got also the parents. So it's like this whole point where then it can't be questioned anymore. So why should the people who produce Disney or produce Star Wars toys and stuff like that get to decide how my child views the world?
Right.
You see, that is a cult. So if you're letting your kids watch TV, watch Disney and all this stuff, you're letting them be programmed by a cult. When people hear the word cult, they think it's got to be like some dudes in some secret ritual, like doing dances and weird stuff like that. But that's not what I mean. That's not what the definition of the word is. Yeah. That's just an image that we've been programmed with. So whenever we hear the word, we'll go into fear. And then if something doesn't match the description, we'll reject it. So it's like they might say something like what we're doing with Self-Perfected or any of the other tools that we're suggesting is like trying to program and manipulate people and all this stuff. But it's like, but what is Disney doing?
Yeah.
And we just saw on Netflix, on Twitter, they had this thing about some kid who was trans or whatever. And they said very specifically in there that they're providing this shows to help shape children's worldviews.
Yeah.
They're saying they're doing it. They don't see it as a bad thing. I don't see shaping a child's worldview as a bad thing either. It's just a matter of whether the way you shape it is what's best or not. In fact, this is really what I want to get across is if you're a parent and you're thinking, I'm just going to be hands off and not try to shape my child's worldview because I don't want to impose any sort of restrictions or limitations on them, somebody else is going to do it.
Yeah.
Like you have to shape your child's worldview. Like if you don't shape their worldview, they won't learn the alphabet. They won't learn mathematics. They won't learn anything because you don't come into this world with those things. Those are all symbolic. We have to learn those. We have to integrate those. And the problem is the most important things like being able to have a high vocabulary and being able to read and being able to learn effectively into an old age, all of those things are set by the time your child's basically 7 years old. So if you don't take responsibility for that and you just give them to Disney, well, they're going to be programmed by all that shit. And then your daughter's going to grow up thinking she needs to be a princess. Although that was the old programming. Now the programming is your child she don't need no man.
Right.
You know, like just get rid of all the men.
Yeah.
So it's still not effective. It's still not actual equality in terms of being equal to what you actually are, which is this physical body that you're in. In fact, it's like, this is irrelevant. It's all just preparing people to like eventually be like, fuck this, I'll just be in like my virtual avatar or whatever. You know?
Yeah. Forgetting the whole time the physical body's the source. Because if you don't feed the physical body, you die.
You die.
Yeah.
And people think, and then people have the audacity to believe in the soul and all this other stuff. You know, and they think that, let's say there's an aspect of you that lives after, that goes on after your body dies, right? Is it going to be your personality?
No.
Because your personality is a function of all the information that's been programmed into your body. So whatever it is that you think you are beyond just this body and this life experience that you have, it's not anything you can relate to. Because you've totally just gone down the rabbit hole of identifying with the TV show that you like and the sports team that you like and the type of clothing that you wear and all this other shit that was here before you got here. So how could that be who you really are? You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And so the way I look at it is, who I am is not any kind of a program or anything. It's just the starting point. It's my starting point within whatever context I'm in. So if I'm in a virtual reality or I'm in this reality, would I still do what's best? And that's how I know if we have a virtual reality that everyone gets plugged into or whatever, it's not going to be fundamentally different than this, because the starting point of the people creating it and the starting point of the people in it isn't going to be any different.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Why would the afterlife be any different? If fundamentally who you are is you're going to always do what's best, then you'd be doing that right here.
Yeah.
So when people ask us, 20 years from now, when your kids are like, oh, what did you guys do during the great pandemic of 2020 / race riots / God knows what's going to happen in November of this year. Fuck. Like, who knows? Right? It's not even over. We're only like halfway through the year. Right?
Yeah.
People are already talking about 2020 like it's like the past. It's like, but we're not even into the craziness yet. I'm telling you guys.
Dude, Pentagon just said there's off-world spacecraft.
Tell me about that. I only heard people referring to it. I don't know what the actual thing was.
It's just that the Pentagon has released information that they've recovered some UFOs that were off-planet vehicles, like that they were not of this world.
But is this like some conspiracy guy saying that, or is like the actual Pentagon saying it?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know, because I've just been seeing the headlines of it myself, actually.
Okay,
so I want to find this. Hang on.
But
this is part of the problem, is like you see these headlines which are designed to make us think something.
Right.
I'm looking at the New York Times right now.
Yeah.
Hold on a second. I can't look at it because New York Times wants me to pay. See, all I can see is the headline right now.
Dang.
Which is on purpose. That's on purpose. The paywalls are there because they don't want you to read the article.
Yeah.
They're not even trying to operate at a profit. That's the other fucked up thing.
That's an interesting perspective. So they're not even trying to operate at a profit, but yet they are a for-profit company and they are privately owned. Like, then what's the
Because
point?
The people who own them make money other ways. They're just using this to influence stuff so they can make money in the other ways. Yeah. How much money can you really make selling newspapers?
Not a lot these days.
I mean, you can make billions of dollars, but that's nothing compared to what you can make in controlling energy or whatever. You know what I mean?
I didn't even know you could make billions selling newspapers today.
Well, whatever. No, probably not anymore. It's like a little newspaper, but
yeah,
they're trying to get you to subscribe to the New York Times. Maybe if I do a private window, I don't know. Let's see. Maybe it's just I've looked at too many.
Maybe you have a ad blocker.
No, it won't let me.
Did you find anything, Mitch?
I'd have to log in.
Yeah, former official. So it's from independent.co.uk.
Okay, the Independent. All right.
He said,
that's a brainwashing I trust.
Yeah. All right. Here's the truth, everybody. One former official, Eric Davis, told The Times that he briefed the U.S. Department of Defense in March about the retrieval of off-world vehicles not made on this Earth.
Okay, hold on. Go read that sentence again.
One former official, Eric Davis, told The Times that he briefed the U.S. Department of Defense in March about the retrieval of off-world vehicles not made on this Earth.
Eric Davis. I'm gonna look at
Eric Davis. And then it says the Pentagon consultant and subcontractor said objects he believed we couldn't make ourselves were discovered during his time on the unit, where he has worked since 2007.
So basically, a guy from the Pentagon says that he briefed them on the fact that he saw stuff that he believes are from other planets.
Yeah.
But isn't that different than the Pentagon actually saying, you know what, we're releasing an official report.
Mm-hmm.
We found stuff on other planets.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the way the headlines are portrayed.
Right.
Isn't that weird? And you know what's funny is this whole time up till now, people have been saying, okay, after the coronavirus, they're going to do a fake alien invasion. And they have this thing called Project Bluebeam, which is supposed to be like, they can use this holographic technology to like project stuff so it looks like it's really there. And they're going to use that to like get everybody to like accept one world government because it's like an external threat and all this stuff, right? But then now it's like right on cue, they're like, oh, this guy says there's alien things from the the Pentagon's admitting there's aliens. So it's like, of course, they're planting the seeds already so they can do the whole fucking pretend alien invasion or whatever.
Hey, did you ever watch that last Spider-Man?
The cartoon looking one?
No, not the cartoon one, but the last one that was with actual people. Because the whole premise of it was that they could take these drones and create this virtual image, but it's 3D, and so you're in it and you're just seeing this image that they've created, and you actually believe it to be that image, but in reality it's these drones behind it that are manipulating everything around you, manipulating everything that you can see so that you actually believe it, and they can touch you and things like that, and so you feel it as well.
Oh,
right. Yeah. And it was funny, I was watching during 4th of July, they had a fleet of drones, like over 100 drones, spelling out things like we love you, but it was all drones that they had coordinated to act in specific ways to create these images, right? And it reminded me of that Spider-Man movie, like, holy crap, like this is something that is actually possible. And I don't know to what extent they can get that technology where it's like you actually believe you're in it, but I mean, if there's this technology that they can make you believe there's an alien coming from outer space, and then they could coordinate these drones with it, that's essentially like exactly what the movie was saying.
But wouldn't I mean, if you think about it, what if the media just told us that there was an alien invasion and it was in a remote, it was like the spaceship was somewhere that nobody could physically go to.
Mm-hmm.
And they wouldn't allow anyone to go there because of coronavirus restriction, lockdown, or something like that. They could very easily show you all the footage. And I mean, look, is that likely to happen? I don't think it's likely to happen.
Right.
I really don't. Like, I know those people who will be like, they'll just straight up just believe it because it fits into their bias. I don't see it's very likely, just because I don't know. I don't know. Like maybe it is possible. Maybe the extent of the technology required to fake it to where it looks believable, where no one could question it. But then think about this, like, let's just say it did happen and people started questioning it online. Wouldn't it be like a national security threat to question it?
Yeah.
So like they would just shut all that down.
Just like it's a health threat to question COVID.
So I don't think they'd have to get it perfect. I think they'd have to get it just the media impulsing everybody with the right information for everyone to accept that it's happening. And I think that the coronavirus thing is a perfect example of that, because I haven't seen people I haven't heard any ambulances going in and out of our neighborhood or any, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, I don't see it. And you talk to anybody, they're like, the hospitals are not full. I know people in the pharmaceutical industries and they're like, yeah, it's a bunch of bullshit. And,
yeah,
you know, it's like, So is it possible? Absolutely, it's possible. I mean, think about this. Okay, the systemic racism thing. It's kind of hard to see it. Some people see it, and a lot of people don't see it. It's like the coronavirus. A lot of people see it, some people don't see it. Alien invasion. Some people will see it, some people don't see it. But is any of it based on your actual direct experience, or is it all based on information? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, can you see systemic racism right now?
What would that look like?
That's what I'm saying, though. You can't see it.
Yeah.
It's like it's not a thing that can be in the room with you.
Right.
Just like coronavirus, even though I know technically you could say it could be in the room with you, you can't see it. All you can see is, oh, there's all these people apparently dying, and there's the amount of hospitalizations has spiked and all this stuff. And then they'll show where, you know, they've been double counting things and all this other stuff, and you're like, oh, okay, so it didn't spike. It was, or they were actually not reporting for like since April through June, and they reported all of those at the end of June, so it looked like a big spike.
Yeah.
But all that, the only spike you saw was in the graph. You didn't actually see a spike in reality. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You didn't actually see physically, tangibly a spike. You just heard about it. You saw it through information. So I think that an alien invasion thing could be done in the same way, where it doesn't ever have to be like you see an actual alien in your room. It's just they're there and they're saying that, you know, they're here or whatever. It's like it could just be done where you're just being told it's happening.
Wow.
You know, I don't really see where the end game is with that. Would it just be like, well, there's a spaceship there forever?
It's a common enemy.
But what's the resolution?
There's none.
Trust the government even more.
But I mean, does it ever go away? What's the plan? Does it be like, okay, we're leaving now? Okay, you beat us up, we're leaving, or is it like we're just accepting that there's aliens now, even though you never see them? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The same thing with the coronavirus. Are we just all gonna everyone's just gonna wear masks from now on?
What about those people? What about those people who then start identifying as alien? Like, I'm trans alien, you know? So I know I look like human, but
didn't Katy Perry and Kanye West do a song like that?
Did they?
He was featured on it. Yeah. Katy Perry has a song. What is it? Katy Perry Alien. I think it's just called Alien. E.T. E.T.
Okay, I am
featuring. I'll read the lyrics to you. You'll love this.
Okay.
You're so hypnotizing. Could you be the devil? Could you be an angel? Your touch magnetizing. Feels like I'm floating. Leaves my body glowing. They say be afraid. You're not like the others. Futuristic lovers. Different DNA. They don't understand you. You're from a whole other world. A different dimension. You open my eyes. I'm ready to go. Lead me into the light. Kiss me. Infect me with your love and fill me with your poison. Take me. Want to be a victim, ready for abduction. Boy, you're an alien. Your touch so foreign. That's like some xenophobic stuff. It's supernatural, extraterrestrial. You're so supersonic. Want to feel your powers. Stun me with your lasers. Your kiss is cosmic. Every move is magic. It's like a 12-year-old horny kid wrote this.
Wait a minute. Isn't that the level of vocabulary that most people have, though?
Exactly. But isn't it like, hold on, there is this transcendental on another level. Boy, you're my lucky star. I want to walk on your wavelength and be there when you vibrate. For you, I risk it all.
And think how many times that song's been downloaded, listened to, brainwashing young boys and girls of the world.
It's got 565 million views on this YouTube one.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm a victim. Yeah, brainwash me. Yeah, touch me with your vibrator.
I like the first comment. It says Katy Perry, song about falling in love with an alien. Kanye West, alien sex. Because that's like, I guess his contribution to it is he like sings about that part of it.
This is before he went full on Christian, right?
Yeah.
Had to be.
Exactly. So yeah, will there be an alien invasion this year? Put in the comments below if you want there to be an alien invasion. Every like is one invader. They're gonna be like, take me to your leader. Everyone's gonna be like, send Trump. I'll negotiate with him.
That's good.
Wow.
Trump's gonna like, he's gonna convince them to just like invade China or something like that. China's gonna be like, yes, send them over here. We steal their technology.
Yeah.
And like they give it to the rest of the world. So who knows? Maybe some good can come out of the whole thing. I don't know. We'll see. You guys want to leave it out there for today?
Yeah, I think that's good.
Yeah. So I guess what's the recap here? The whole point is this: if we're just going to sit and watch everything happen, that's not going to change anything. But if you're thinking you could just go out there and protest and you're just going to like demand that things change, that's not going to change either. Because what you're actually demanding is that other people realize the problems and take responsibility for them. So if you don't believe that it's possible to create a world that's best, then why would you demand other people to recognize the problems that you see? So what we're really suggesting here, you know, we're having fun, we're joking in some ways too, but what we're really talking about is the best place to start is with each of us individually by using the tools that will support you to take responsibility within yourself, to take control of your own programming. So that way it's not somebody else telling you what to think. And the major problem with all the protesters and so forth is they don't realize they're being told what to protest about. Because look at what they're not protesting about, right? And that's why there's no solutions, because they don't actually understand the problem. It's just certain things you're told and you're programmed with, you get emotional about it. And then when there's like, you're told to take action, you take action. So literally all these protesters are just like Manchurian candidates out there, just like on the street doing what they're programmed to do, right? That's not a solution. But ultimately it's about you taking responsibility for yourself. And then if you do have kids, which I have kids, I would recommend it. It's amazing, but only do it if you're willing to take full responsibility for yourself as the parent and then support your kids as well. So that's the parting message I would leave. Any final thoughts from you guys?
I think that's good.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Mitch, you want
to the community? Yeah.
You've got the shirt on there. I like that.
Self-perfected.com. Join the Facebook group and, you know, plug in so you can see what this actually looks like to create a world that's best for all, because we're well underway. You know, join in.
We'll see you on the next one. Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.